Hello. Settle in comfortably, wrap yourself up warmly, and let the gentle whisper of stories carry you into a deep, peaceful sleep. The first breath of dawn in ancient Egypt was not a gentle awakening, but a stark reminder of the desert's relentless power. Even as the sun, still nascent on the eastern horizon, began its ascent, the air carried a lingering warmth from the previous day, a precursor to the searing heat yet to come. Imagine the soft earth beneath bare feet, still cool from the night, but rapidly yielding to the sun's persistent embrace. For the ancient Egyptians, living in a climate where average summer temperatures routinely exceeded 40 degrees, 104 degrees, and often peaked at 49 degrees, 120 degrees in Upper Egypt, survival depended on an intimate understanding of their environment. Unlike our air-conditioned world, their strategies for comfort were embedded in their architecture, daily routines, and even their very understanding of sleep. The annual solar radiation in regions like Aswan, for example, is among the highest globally, reaching an average of 6,000 kWh per year. This intense solar energy was not just a challenge, it was a defining factor in every aspect of their existence, profoundly impacting how they found repose. Archaeological evidence, meticulous records from papyrus scrolls, and the insights of Egyptologists like Dr. Salima Ikram of the American University in Cairo reveal sophisticated passive cooling techniques. Their homes, predominantly constructed from mud brick, a material with excellent thermal mass properties, were designed to absorb heat slowly during the day and release it sparingly at night. This natural insulation created a crucial temperature differential indoors. Furthermore, the orientation of these dwellings, typically positioned to minimize direct sun exposure, and the strategic placement of small, high windows facilitated crucial cross-ventilation. This wasn't merely comfort, it was a fundamental engineering principle, a testament to their profound knowledge of sustainable living in an unforgiving landscape. To grasp how the ancient Egyptians slept, one must first understand how they lived, constantly anticipating and adapting to the sun's dominion from the moment of dawn. As the sun climbed higher, casting shorter shadows, the promise of the day's relentless heat became an inescapable reality. The air, once merely warm, now began to thicken, radiating heat from every exposed surface. This period, from roughly 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., represented the apex of climatic challenge for ancient Egyptians, necessitating carefully orchestrated routines to mitigate heat stress. Their primary strategy focused on a deep understanding of thermal comfort, or rather, thermal survival. Dr. Barry Kemp, in his extensive archaeological work at Amarna, has meticulously documented the architectural responses to this environment. Homes, meticulously built from sun-dried mud bricks, a composite of Nile silt and straw, possessed superior thermal mass. Their thick walls absorbed solar radiation slowly throughout the morning and afternoon. This delayed heat transfer kept interiors remarkably cooler than the outside air for several crucial hours. Imagine stepping from the searing desert into the relative coolness of a mud brick home, a stark contrast of perhaps 10-15 degrees, 5 to 8 degrees. Furthermore, the design incorporated specific features to minimize direct solar gain. Window openings were intentionally small, often placed high on walls, and typically faced north or west to avoid the most intense sun. Courtyards, often central to larger dwellings, provided shaded outdoor spaces, and sometimes featured shallow pools or vegetation that contributed to evaporative cooling. This intricate interplay of material science and architectural design was not merely incidental. It was a calibrated response to their demanding climate, a testament to centuries of accumulated knowledge. The day's activities often shifted indoors or to shaded areas during these peak hours, reflecting a profound respect for the sun's power, allowing the population to conserve energy and avoid the debilitating effects of heat stroke. This adherence to tailored daily rhythms was as critical as the architectural solutions to surviving the daily burn. As the scorching desert sun beat down, turning the landscape into a shimmering mirage, the ancient Egyptians sought refuge not in complex machinery, but in the earth itself. Their homes, from humble abodes to elaborate palaces, were marvels of bioclimatic design, meticulously crafted from the most abundant and effective material available, Nile mud. The construction of these dwellings was a sophisticated response to their extreme climate. Mud brick, made from a mixture of riverine silt, clay, sand and straw, then sun-dried, formed walls that could be surprisingly thick, often exceeding 60 centimeters, 2 feet. This substantial thickness provided exceptional thermal mass. During the day, these massive walls slowly absorbed the intense solar radiation, preventing its rapid transmission to the interior. At night, as ambient temperatures dropped, the stored heat would dissipate outwards, but the interior spaces remained relatively stable and cooler for extended periods. Research published in the Journal of Archaeological Science highlights the superior insulating properties of mud brick, demonstrating its ability to maintain internal temperatures some 10-15 degrees Celsius, 18-27 degrees, below external peak temperatures. Furthermore, a common architectural feature was the inclusion of small, high-placed windows. These were strategically positioned to allow for cross-ventilation, facilitating air movement without letting in excessive direct sunlight, particularly from the west, which receives the harshest afternoon sun. Some larger homes or villas, like those excavated at Amarna, even incorporated roof vents or wind scoops, known as malkaf in later architectural traditions, but conceptually present earlier, to actively channel cooler air from higher altitudes into the living spaces. These passive cooling innovations, combined with the prevalent use of light-colored plaster and whitewash on exterior surfaces to reflect solar energy, illustrate a holistic approach to thermal regulation. The very scent of drying mud and the occasional waft of myrrh used in rituals would have been intimately connected with the comfort and structure of these resilient homes, designed not just for living, but for surviving the fierce desert summer. Beyond the thermal performance of mud brick, ancient Egyptian architects employed a sophisticated array of passive cooling techniques that exploited natural phenomena to create comfortable microclimates within their homes. Their ingenuity in adobe and shade transformed mere dwellings into resilient havens against the desert's extreme heat. A fundamental strategy involves strategic orientation. Excavations of numerous ancient Egyptian towns, including the well-preserved workers' village at Deir el-Medina, reveal a consistent pattern. Houses were often clustered closely together, creating narrow alleyways that provided mutual shading for adjacent structures. Moreover, individual buildings were typically oriented along a north-south axis, minimizing direct exposure to the intense sunrise from the east and the prolonged, scorching afternoon sun from the west. This simple but effective approach significantly reduced the heat load on exterior walls. Furthermore, courtyards played a pivotal role in urban planning and individual domestic architecture. These open-air spaces, often shaded by awnings, strategically planted trees like sycamores or palms, or surrounding walls, served as cooling reservoirs. temperatures within a shaded courtyard could be several degrees lower than outside. Some larger dwellings incorporated reflective pools or fountains within these courtyards, utilizing evaporative cooling, a process where water vaporizes, absorbing latent heat from the surrounding air and lowering its temperature. This effect, though localized, contributed significantly to the overall comfort of the interior spaces, particularly as air circulated through the home. Architectural historian A.J. Spencer, in his studies of ancient Egyptian building practices, emphasizes how these integrated design principles showcase a remarkable adaptive intelligence. The walls that breathe were not just mud and straw. They were the embodiment of centuries of observation and a profound understanding of how to live harmoniously and comfortably with the relentless power of the sun. Their architecture was, in essence, a sophisticated environmental system, far preceding modern air conditioning, yet achieving similar goals through entirely natural means. The vibrant pulse of ancient Egypt was irrevocably tied to the Nile River, a shimmering ribbon of life carving its way through an otherwise arid land. For a civilization living under the relentless desert sun, the Nile was more than just a source of sustenance. It was a powerful, natural air conditioner. The river's immediate impact on local climate was profound. As the sun began its descent and temperatures typically remained high, the vast surface area of the Nile, constantly flowing, created a measurable microclimate along its banks. This mass of water absorbed solar radiation during the day, but, critically, its thermal inertia meant it heated up and cooled down much slower than the surrounding land. This difference in heat retention manifested as a cooling breeze, particularly evident in the evenings. As the land rapidly lost its heat to the night sky, the relatively warmer air above the river rose, drawing cooler air from the banks inland. This natural nocturnal convection was a consistent, albeit subtle, source of relief. Beyond this atmospheric influence, the Nile facilitated evaporative cooling on a personal level. Egyptians used water liberally to mitigate heat. Textile evidence, particularly from tombs, indicates widespread use of linen, a light, breathable fabric derived from flax. These garments, when dampened, provided significant cooling as the water evaporated from the fabric. Similarly, water stored in porous clay vessels, quillas or zia, would slowly seep through the sides and evaporate, actively cooling the remaining water inside by several degrees Celsius. This chilled water was not only vital for hydration, but also served as a means of cooling the body from within. Dr. Rosalie David, a leading Egyptologist, notes the omnipresence of water vessels in depictions of daily life, underscoring its pivotal role beyond mere drinking. The Nile's life-giving caress was thus a multifaceted approach to comfort, directly cooling the air and empowering personal cooling strategies, forming an indispensable element in battling the summer's oppressive heat. In ancient Egypt, the Nile supplied not only the means for passive cooling, but also a constant, essential ritual, the daily procurement and consumption of its waters. This was more than just quenching thirst. It was a fundamental aspect of heat management and survival, central to every individual's bodily regulation. The act of hydrating in ancient Egypt was inextricably linked to the characteristics of the Nile itself. While modern knowledge alerts us to potential pathogens, the Egyptians accessed water directly from the river, and its constant flow helped to minimize stagnant conditions. For household use and drinking, water was often allowed to settle in large, unglazed clay jars known as zir or kulla. The porous nature of these vessels was not a flaw, but an intentional design feature. As water slowly seeped through the microscopic pores to the exterior surface, it evaporated, drawing heat from the remaining water inside. This natural refrigeration process, scientifically termed evaporative cooling, could lower the water temperature internally by several degrees, often making it 5 to 10 degrees C, 9 to 18 degrees cooler than the ambient air temperature. This chilled water was a crucial defense against dehydration and heat stroke, especially as daily life often involved strenuous physical labor under the sun. Depictions from tombs and temples frequently show workers, farmers, and artisans pausing to drink from such vessels, indicating its widespread and vital role. The cool water helped to regulate core body temperature from within, a biological necessity in a climate where external cooling options were limited. Furthermore, historians like Dr. Joanne Fletcher emphasize that the Egyptians understood the importance of continuous hydration. This wasn't merely a casual drink, it was a deliberate, frequent intake of water, often flavored with fruit or a touch of honey, to maintain vital fluid balance throughout the day. The ritual of the river drink was thus a direct physiological intervention, turning the Nile's bounty into a personal cool-down strategy, ensuring the body's internal systems could cope with the external extremes. In an environment where extreme heat was a daily reality, even the simplest choice of attire became a crucial element of thermal regulation. For the ancient Egyptians, the answer lay in the remarkable properties of linen, a fabric whose cooling capabilities were as vital as the mud bricks that formed their homes. Linen, woven from the fibers of the flax plant, was the quintessential ancient Egyptian textile. Its widespread use, from the clothing of pharaohs to the wraps of mummies, is attested by countless archaeological finds and textual references. What made linen so indispensable in a 49-degree summer? Its unique structure. Linen fibers are notably strong, smooth, and possess a high degree of crystallinity, which allows them to absorb and release moisture very quickly. This inherent breathability and wicking ability were paramount for maintaining comfort. Unlike cotton, which tends to absorb moisture and cling, linen swiftly draws perspiration away from the skin and releases it into the air through evaporation. This process of evaporative cooling is the body's primary mechanism for expelling heat, and linen effectively facilitated it. Research in textile science confirms linen's superior thermal conductivity and moisture regain properties compared to other natural fibers. Furthermore, its smooth, lustrous surface reflects more light and heat than rougher fabrics, contributing to a cooler feel. The typical ancient Egyptian garment, a simple tunic or kilt, was often loosely woven and lightly colored, further maximizing air circulation and solar reflectivity. This practical elegance meant that even while working under a relentless sun, the Egyptian could employ the weaver's touch to their advantage, ensuring a constant, subtle battle against the scorching skin, a physical barrier designed not to insulate, but to actively cool. The fashion of ancient Egypt was more than mere aesthetics. It was a carefully considered strategy for mitigating the formidable summer heat. Garments were designed not to cover, but to actively cool, embodying a philosophy of drape and flow, perfectly suited for survival in the swelter. The predominant attire for both men and women, regardless of social standing, consisted of simple, unstitched or minimally stitched garments made from light-colored, finely woven linen. For men, this was typically a kilt or a tunic, while women wore a sheath dress. The key to their effectiveness lay in their loose fit and minimal contact with the skin. This allowed for maximum air circulation, preventing heat from being trapped against the body and facilitating the evaporation of sweat. Dr. Gay Robbins, an expert on ancient Egyptian art and culture, points out that while artistic conventions sometimes depict very tight clothing, actual surviving garments and practical analysis suggest a far looser fit for daily wear. Furthermore, the choice of white or very light-colored linen was deliberate and scientifically sound. Light colors reflect a significantly higher proportion of solar radiation than dark colors. This principle of albedo, the measure of diffuse reflection of solar radiation, meant that ancient Egyptians were essentially wearing tiny, portable shields against the sun's direct heat. Imagine the difference in sensation experienced by someone wearing a light linen tunic compared to a dark, heavy fabric under a 40 degrees C sun, a difference that could literally be life-saving. For those engaged in outdoor labor, such as farmers or quarry workers, head coverings and broader shawls were often employed not just for sun protection, but also to harness mild breezes for additional cooling. This holistic approach to clothing, integrating material science, design, and practical application, demonstrates an acute awareness of environmental conditions. The ancient Egyptian wardrobe was thus a testament to their enduring ingenuity, a seamless blend of practicality and elegant simplicity, tailored perfectly for their sweltering world. As the midday sun beat down, turning ancient Egyptian cities into vast ovens, the rhythm of daily life had to adapt to the oppressive heat. The bustling markets, the heart of economic and social activity, became a testament to ingrained strategies for endurance. Here, amidst the symphony of bartering and the sweltering trade, the Egyptians demonstrated collective and individual techniques for navigating the most challenging hours of the day. Marketplaces, like those depicted in tomb paintings, were often partially shaded by awnings crafted from linen or woven reed mats, offering a crucial respite from direct solar radiation. The narrow, winding streets of cities like Thebes or Memphis also contributed to self-shading, a principle observed in many traditional desert architectures globally. Vendors, often clad in the aforementioned light linen garments, would keep their perishable goods, such as fruits, vegetables, and meats, cool by employing various methods. Evaporative cooling was paramount. Damp cloths covered produce, and pottery vessels filled with chilled water from the Nile were omnipresent, providing not just hydration, but also localized cooling as water slowly evaporated from their porous surfaces. Furthermore, the timing of market activities itself often shifted. While early mornings saw brisk trade as people stocked up before the peak heat, there would typically be a siesta period during the hottest hours of the afternoon. This practice, common across many hot climates, allowed the population to retreat indoors, minimize physical exertion, and conserve energy when the risk of heat stroke was highest. Dr. Elizabeth Froude, an Egyptologist specializing in daily life, highlights how such daily rhythms were less about leisure and more about essential physiological adaptation. The sheer volume of transactions and movement within these bustling centers meant that individuals had to be acutely aware of their body's limits. The dusty marketplace, seemingly chaotic, was in fact a highly organized environment where human ingenuity, combined with practical environmental adjustments, allowed commerce and community to thrive even under the harshest summer sun. Amidst the sensory overload of the ancient Egyptian marketplace, under a sun that tested the limits of human endurance, the strategies for comfort extended beyond physical objects to the very patterns of human interaction. Bartering in the blaze wasn't just an economic exchange. It was a carefully calibrated social ritual designed to minimize heat exposure and conserve energy. The peak sunlight hours often saw a reduction in the most strenuous activities. While trade certainly occurred throughout the day, the intensity and duration of negotiations might have been moderated. Archaeological evidence from sites like Amarna indicates that many work-related activities and more rigorous social engagements were shifted to the cooler morning and late afternoon hours. During the intense midday, a more relaxed atmosphere might prevail, with interactions becoming punctuated by rests in shaded areas. This cultural adaptation, documented by Egyptologists studying daily life, suggests a societal understanding of the physiological demands of the climate. Crucially, personal cooling devices were not just for homes. They were mobile tools for individuals. Handheld fans, often simple palm fronds or finely woven papyrus, were ubiquitous. These weren't just status symbols, but practical instruments for creating personal airflow, aiding evaporative cooling from the skin. Servants might fan their masters, but everyone, from the lowliest vendor to the highest official, could employ a fan for immediate relief. Moreover, the practice of applying perfumed oils, often containing extracts like myrrh, served not only a cosmetic and ritualistic purpose, but also likely had a practical cooling effect. These volatile organic compounds, upon evaporation, would draw heat from the skin, similar to how alcohol-based rubs provide a sensation of coolness. The human connection, therefore, became interwoven with these cooling tactics. Sharing shade, offering a refreshing drink, or conversing in more measured tones. These were not insignificant gestures. They fostered a communal resilience, a shared acknowledgement of the environmental challenge. This blend of material resourcefulness and social adaptation allowed the ancient Egyptians to conduct their vital commerce and maintain their societal fabric, even when the sun beat down with its most unforgiving intensity, demonstrating that beneath the relentless heat, human cooperation and ingenuity thrived. Beyond their architectural and sartorial adaptations, the ancient Egyptians employed a powerful, yet often overlooked strategy to combat the summer heat: their diet. The very sustenance they consumed was inherently tailored to the demands of their climate, a testament to a deep-seated practical nutritional wisdom. Their primary caloric intake came from plant-based foods, especially grains like emmer wheat and barley, which form the basis of their bread and beer. While these provided essential energy, they were complemented by a rich array of fruits and vegetables well suited to a hot climate. Dates, figs, grapes, pomegranates, and melons were not just delicious. They were packed with water and electrolytes, vital for replenishing what was lost through constant perspiration. Melons, in particular, with their high water content, often exceeding 90%, would have been a quintessential summer food, hydrating and providing succor against the relentless sun. Evidence from tomb reliefs and archaeological finds consistently demonstrates the abundance and variety of these plant-based foods. Expert analysis from historical nutritionists suggests that a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, with lower fat and protein content compared to more temperate climates, naturally reduces the body's metabolic heat production. Digesting heavy, protein-rich meals requires more internal metabolic effort, thus generating more heat, a process known as diet-induced thermogenesis. The Egyptian diet, while including some meat for elites, was predominantly lighter, relying on easily digestible carbohydrates and hydrous produce, therefore minimizing this internal heat load. Furthermore, fermented beverages like beer, while alcoholic, also contributed to hydration and nutrient intake. This sophisticated understanding of balancing energy needs with climatic stress, where food played an active role in temperature regulation, illustrates yet another layer of their remarkable adaptation. The taste of grains and fruits, therefore, became a daily ritual in their defiance of the heat, a delicious strategy for maintaining internal balance in an extreme external world. Beyond the immediate cooling benefits of their dietary choices, the ancient Egyptian culinary philosophy was a masterclass in sustaining energy and health in a relentless climate. Their meals were structured not just for satiety, but to actively support the body's internal battle against heat stress. The primary staples, bread and beer, were consumed throughout the day, providing consistent energy release without the sudden metabolic spike associated with very rich foods. Bread was often made from coarsely ground emmer or barley, providing complex carbohydrates that offered sustained energy rather than a rapid burn. Beer, a low-alcohol, nutrient-rich beverage common to men, women, and children, served as both a calorie source and a hydrator, often safer to drink than plain river water due to its fermentation process. This combination ensured a steady blood sugar level, preventing fatigue and lethargy, crucial in a demanding environment. A key aspect of their dietary strategy was also revealed in the timing and preparation of meals. While larger communal meals might have occurred in the cooler evenings, lighter repasts of bread, vegetables, and fruit were likely consumed during the day. Cooking methods often involved baking bread or boiling, minimizing the amount of heavy, heat-generating labor in kitchens during the hottest hours. Evidence from ancient ovens and food remains indicates a preference for simplicity and efficiency in preparing daily nourishment. Furthermore, the cultivation of various herbs and spices, such as mint, dill, and coriander, not only added flavor, but some may have possessed mild diaphoretic properties, promoting perspiration and thus aiding in the body's natural cooling process. This nuanced understanding of nutrition, where every component from the field to the feast was selected and consumed with an implicit awareness of its impact on thermal regulation, demonstrates profound empirical knowledge. To the ancient Egyptian, food was not merely fuel, it was a critical tool in their daily survival and maintenance of vitality. They understood that sustaining energy in a sun-baked world required a delicate balance, where each meal was a strategic step in enduring the monumental challenge of their climate. For ancient Egyptian children, the summer months were a time of both boundless energy and inescapable heat. Yet their play was not heedless. Growing up as children of the sun, they quickly learned a prudence born of necessity, instinctively adapting their activities to the rhythms dictated by the scorching climate. Archaeological finds, such as toys and game boards, alongside depictions in tomb paintings, reveal a vibrant childhood, but physical exertion was carefully managed. During the intense midday hours, when temperatures soared to their peak, children would typically engage in quieter, indoor activities within the relative cool of their mud brick homes. Games involving strategy like senet or crafting small figures would have been common during this period. The narrow streets and courtyards, though bustling in cooler times, would often see a lull, as even the most energetic young ones sought shade and respite. When outdoor play resumed in the cooler late afternoon, near the river or in shaded areas, it often involved water. The Nile itself, or irrigation canals, provided a natural playground. Splashing, swimming, and even simple wading would have been a common way for children to cool down. This direct contact with water, facilitating evaporative cooling, was not only fun, but a survival strategy. Dr. Lynn Meskel, whose work often explores social practices, highlights how children's activities are deeply embedded within cultural and environmental contexts. Their play patterns were, in effect, naturally regulated. Furthermore, children, like adults, wore minimal clothing, often just a simple linen kilt, or no clothing at all for very young children, maximizing skin exposure for evaporative cooling. Their light skin tone, before the inevitable tanning from constant sun exposure, might have also offered some natural UV protection. This early conditioning, where play was intertwined with climate adaptation, instilled a lifelong understanding of how to manage exposure and maintain thermal comfort. The childhood of an ancient Egyptian was a daily lesson in respecting the sun's power, a continuous dance between the joy of play and the prudence required to thrive in their sweltering world. Growing up under the unforgiving Egyptian sky instilled a lifetime of lessons in resilience and adaptation, particularly concerning the relentless summer heat. For ancient Egyptian children, coping mechanisms were not taught in a classroom, but absorbed through daily observation and practical experience, becoming ingrained habits from a young age. Central to this early learning was the development of a keen awareness of shade and water. Children quickly understood the trajectory of the sun and the ever-shifting zones of protection it created. Playing in the fleeting shadows of buildings, trees, or even large pottery jars became an intuitive strategy. Similarly, the accessibility and cooling power of water were fundamental. Washing hands and faces frequently, perhaps splashing in a small water basin, or drinking from the porous zir jars, was a constant, almost subconscious act. These aren't just activities, they are early life skills in thermal regulation. Furthermore, parental and community guidance played a significant role. Children would have been encouraged to wear light-colored linen, to stay hydrated, and to avoid peak midday sun exposure, especially during strenuous play. This collective wisdom, passed down through generations, created a cultural framework for heat management. While medical knowledge of heat stroke was undoubtedly limited, its debilitating and often fatal effects would have been widely recognized, fostering a strong emphasis on preventative behaviors. The very physical development of ancient Egyptians, from childhood, was likely adapted to their climate. Ethnographic studies of contemporary peoples in similar hot, arid environments suggest a natural inclination towards lower activity levels during the hottest hours and a more communal, less individualistic approach to task management, allowing for breaks and shared burdens. This cultural conditioning began in childhood, shaping not just their immediate behaviors, but their physiological responses and their broader outlook on life. The lessons learned beneath the blazing sun were not just about personal comfort. They were about integrating seamlessly with their environment, understanding its limits and its gifts, and developing a profound, embodied resilience that would serve them throughout their lives. The children of the Nile were truly shaped by their greatest resource and their greatest challenge. Even as the desert sun pushed temperatures to extreme highs, demanding constant adaptation, the ancient Egyptians did not merely survive, they thrived creatively. Their monumental art and intricate craftsmanship are enduring testaments to this, often made by artisans toiling in conditions that would challenge modern tolerances, crafting beauty in the oppressive air. Consider the workshops of ancient Egypt, the stone carvers laboring on colossal statues, the painters meticulously decorating tomb walls, or the potters firing ceramics. Many of these activities were inherently heat-generating or required intense physical exertion. Stone quarries, for instance, were open-air environments where temperatures could easily exceed 50 °C, 122 °C, due to direct sun exposure and heat radiating from the rock itself. Evidence from Deir el-Medina, the village of the tomb builders, shows that artisans' homes incorporated many of the passive cooling features explored earlier, providing a cooler retreat after a day's work. However, during active work hours, direct strategies were employed. Ample water was a constant necessity, provided in porous vessels for cooling. Workers often wore minimal clothing, restricted to a simple linen loincloth to maximize skin exposure for evaporative cooling. Illustrations from ancient Egyptian tombs, like those in the Valley of the Kings, frequently depict laborers with water jars nearby, underscoring the vital role of hydration. Furthermore, the work schedules were often adapted to the climate. Tasks requiring intense physical output were often undertaken in the cooler morning and late afternoon hours, with longer breaks or lighter duties scheduled during midday. Expert analysis from Dr. Joanne Fletcher highlights that the rhythm of work was intrinsically linked to the sun's cycle, a practical adjustment replicated in many traditional societies in hot climates. The artisans' sweat, therefore, not only reflected their effort and dedication, but was an active component of their physiological cooling system. Their ability to produce such exquisite and lasting works under these conditions speaks volumes about their resilience and systematic approach to environmental management. The creation of enduring beauty was not just an artistic endeavor. It was a daily battle fought and won against the very elements, a profound expression of human ingenuity sustained even in the most oppressive heat. Even in workshops where heat was not just external but actively generated, ancient Egyptian artisans maintained remarkable focus and dedication. Consider the metalworkers forging bronze tools, or the glass blowers shaping delicate vessels. These crafts demanded close proximity to intense heat sources, pushing human adaptability to its limits amidst the already scorching ambient temperatures. For such demanding occupations, the environmental controls, rudimentary as they were, became critical. Workshops were typically semi-open structures, often with high ceilings or strategically placed openings to maximize natural ventilation. While this exposed workers to some outdoor heat, it also allowed fumes and superheated air from furnaces to escape. The use of large fans, not just handheld, but fixed, often manually operated devices designed to create a continuous airflow, is documented in some relief carvings, suggesting an early form of industrial cooling. These fans would have been crucial for dispersing localized heat and enhancing evaporative cooling for the workers. Moreover, the materials themselves sometimes offered a buffer. Clay, for instance, used in pottery kilns, has a high thermal mass that can absorb and regulate heat, but the most significant factor remained the human element, the physical conditioning, the sheer endurance, and the highly specific work schedules. Artisans engaged in high-heat activities would likely have had shorter shifts, frequent breaks, and constant access to cold water. They understood that pushing beyond certain physiological limits was counterproductive, risking error, injury, or heat stroke. Dr. Salima Ikram often emphasizes the pragmatic nature of ancient Egyptian society. Their scheduling was a calculated response to maximizing output while minimizing the debilitating effects of environmental stress. The archaeological record, filled with countless masterpieces, belies the extreme conditions under which they were created. Each statue, each painted fresco, each piece of jewelry stands as a testament not only to incredible artistic skill, but to the human spirit's ability to maintain focus amidst the flames of a furnace and the blaze of the desert sun. Their dedication to art and craft, combined with ingenious adaptations, allowed them to transform raw materials into extraordinary artifacts, proving that even in the most challenging environments, human creativity and productive labor could flourish. Beyond the pragmatic solutions of architecture, clothing, and diet, the ancient Egyptians also found a different kind of refuge from the intense summer heat, a spiritual one. Their deeply ingrained religious practices and profound connection to the divine offered a mental and emotional counterpoint to the physical discomfort, a form of inner solace in a sweltering world. The colossal temples, monumental and awe-inspiring, were not only places of worship, but also sophisticated exercises in passive cooling. Their thick stone walls, often several meters thick, provided an even greater thermal mass than mud brick homes. Within these sacred spaces, particularly the inner sanctuaries and hypostal halls, temperatures would have been significantly lower than the oppressive outdoor air. Imagine the priests, robed in fine white linen, moving through these dim, cool corridors, the air heavy with incense but refreshingly cooler than the fierce sun outside. This architectural design implicitly facilitated a sense of calm and spiritual transcendence. Religious rituals themselves often involved the use of water and air. Libations, the pouring of water as an offering, were common, and while symbolic, they also reinforced the cooling and life-giving properties of water. The wafting of incense, creating subtle air currents, and the rhythmic chanting would have also contributed to a meditative state, perhaps distracting from physical discomfort. The emphasis on purity and cleanliness, frequently involving ritualistic washing, further links spirituality with the physical act of cooling and refreshing the body. Dr. Emily Teeter, an expert on Egyptian religion, highlights how ancient Egyptian rituals were deeply holistic, integrating physical and spiritual well-being. For the priests especially, their duties within the cooler confines of the temples, their access to clean, cool water, and their dedicated spiritual practice provided a form of internal regulation. The mental tranquility fostered by worship, prayer, and ritual might have also played a psychological role in managing heat stress, demonstrating a human capacity to find comfort, not just in tangible solutions, but in the intangible realms of belief. The priest chant, resonating within the cool stone, became a melody of resilience, a spiritual refuge from the relentless, heat-drenched world outside. The deeply spiritual nature of ancient Egyptian society meant that their relationship with the natural world, including its formidable heat, was often mediated through their gods and the rituals dedicated to them. Faith, in many ways, served as a psychological and communal shield against the elements, providing reassurance and a sense of control in an often uncontrollable environment. The sun itself, in its powerful and life-giving, yet also punishing aspect, was revered as the deity Ra. This veneration was not just abstract, it underscored an understanding of the sun's central role in their lives. By worshipping Ra, Egyptians acknowledged his omnipotence, potentially seeing both the blessing of warmth and the trial of heat as natural expressions of divine power. This belief system could foster a degree of acceptance for the harsh realities of summer, perhaps framing endurance as a form of piety or a natural order that must be respected. Offerings and prayers, while not physically altering the temperature, could provide psychological comfort and reduce anxiety, which itself can exacerbate the perception of heat stress. Moreover, certain deities were associated with concepts that offered relief. Osiris, god of the underworld and rebirth, was also linked to the life-giving waters of the Nile and agricultural fertility. Invoking such gods, or participating in their festivals, particularly those linked to the annual inundation cycle that brought relief from the dry, hot season, could have provided a communal psychological buffer. These festivals often involved water rituals, feasting on cooling foods, and communal celebrations that offered both physical and spiritual respite. Archaeological evidence, particularly from amulets and grave goods, shows a widespread belief in protective deities and charms against various afflictions, including illness that could arise from environmental factors. While direct evidence of charms specifically for heat stroke is scarce, the general emphasis on divine protection against harm would encompass the dangers presented by extreme weather. This belief system, fostering a sense of divine protection and cosmic order, offered a profound sense of psychological security. In an age without climate control, faith provided a powerful internal resource, allowing the ancient Egyptians to face the scorching summer with a measure of peace, believing in a divine plan that ultimately sustained them, even amidst the most formidable natural challenges. Despite all the architectural, physiological, and cultural adaptations, the relentless Egyptian summer could still take its toll. When preventative measures failed, the ancient Egyptians relied on a sophisticated understanding of medicine and natural remedies to combat the sun's afflictions, demonstrating a pragmatic and empirical approach to healthcare. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest and most comprehensive medical texts from ancient Egypt, dating to around 1550 BCE, details numerous remedies and practices. While it doesn't explicitly name heat stroke in modern terms, it describes symptoms consistent with severe heat exhaustion and dehydration, such as fever, dizziness, headache, and weakness. Remedies often focused on cooling and rehydration. For instance, cold compresses, made from linens soaked in water or sometimes even wine, were applied to the head and body to reduce fever. Cooling baths, particularly in the Nile, or using collected water, would have been a common and effective intervention. Herbal remedies were also extensively used. Plants with known antipyretic, fever-reducing, and anti-inflammatory properties, such as willow bark, a natural source of salicylates similar to aspirin, were likely employed. The ingestion of cooling liquids beyond plain water included diluted honey water or herbal infusions designed to both hydrate and soothe. Interestingly, the papyri also document the importance of hygiene and cleanliness, which, in a hot environment, plays a crucial role in preventing skin infections and maintaining overall health, thus strengthening the body's ability to cope with heat stress. Dr. Jackie Finch's research into ancient Egyptian medical practices highlights their acute observational skills and the extensive use of local flora for therapeutic purposes. The healer's touch was thus multifaceted, a combination of practical physical cooling, herbal medicine, and a clear understanding of the need for rest and hydration. This comprehensive approach underscores their deep engagement with their environment, acknowledging its dangers while actively seeking means to mitigate its impact on human health. For a civilization living at the physiological edge, effective remedies for the sun's afflictions were not luxuries, but necessities vital for collective survival and continuity. In a pre-modern world, where the science of germ theory and advanced pharmaceuticals lay millennia in the future, battling sickness was an ongoing challenge, particularly when compounded by the extreme heat. Ancient Egyptian medicine, while often intertwined with magical and ritualistic elements, possessed a remarkable empirical foundation that enabled them to address ailments, including those exacerbated by their climate. The medical papyri, such as the Edwin Smith Papyrus, showcase an impressive understanding of anatomy and clinical observation. While the focus of this papyrus is largely on trauma and surgery, the Ebers Papyrus, as noted, reveals a rich pharmacopoeia. Physicians, known as Orses Wudamnen Dabduus, were highly specialized, treating specific ailments from ophthalmology to gastroenterology. Their approach to illness during summer months would undoubtedly have prioritized mitigating the effects of heat. For example, any condition causing fever would be aggressively treated with cooling applications and internal remedies, recognizing the inherent danger of elevated body temperature in a hot environment. Beyond immediate treatment, ancient wisdom extended to preventative measures rooted in hygiene. The practice of daily washing, both personal and ritualistic, in a water-scarce region, speaks volumes about its perceived importance. Cleanliness reduced the incidence of skin infections, which could quickly become serious in hot, humid conditions, and limited the spread of disease. Furthermore, the meticulous mummification process, while religious in nature, provided an unparalleled opportunity to study human anatomy and pathology, fostering a deeper understanding of the body and its functions. This experiential knowledge undoubtedly contributed to their ability to diagnose and treat various conditions. The ancient Egyptians also recognized the importance of diet in recovery and general health, particularly the intake of nutrient-rich foods and fluids. This holistic view, integrating environmental adaptations, specific treatments, and preventative practices, allowed a densely populated civilization to thrive for thousands of years. While they certainly faced mortality rates far higher than our own, their systematic approach to healthcare, coupled with an intimate knowledge of their environment, highlights their incredible resilience. Battling sickness in a pre-modern world, especially in the extreme heat, was a testament to their enduring medical ingenuity and their profound connection to the delicate balance of life and well-being. For the ancient Egyptian soldier, the desert was not just a battlefield. It was a primary adversary. Marching under the desert's glare meant facing relentless heat, searing sands, and exhausting conditions that demanded rigorous discipline and intelligent logistical support. The warrior's burden was therefore dual, combating both human foes and the environment itself. Military expeditions, vital for defending borders, expanding territory, or securing trade routes, often took place across open deserts, where temperatures offered no respite. Historical accounts and archaeological findings, from fortresses along the Nile to battle sites in the Levant, indicate that ensuring adequate water supply was paramount to any campaign's success. Water bearers and supply lines were as crucial as archers or charioteers. Soldiers carried water in leather skins or, less commonly, specialized pottery vessels, designed to keep the precious fluid as cool as possible through evaporation. Dr. Robert Morcott, a scholar of Egyptian military history, emphasizes that military logistics in ancient Egypt were heavily dictated by water availability, often limiting the duration and routes of campaigns. Uniforms, too, were adapted. While parade uniforms could be elaborate for active campaigning, soldiers wore minimal attire, typically a linen kilt, sometimes with a padded leather corselet for protection, but never heavy armor that would trap heat. Head coverings, such as scarves or simple caps, were essential for protecting against sunstroke. Bare feet or simple sandals were common, though some depictions show more robust footwear for longer marches. The light color and breathable nature of linen were critical in allowing sweat to evaporate, crucial for thermoregulation under stress. The military's physical training would have also naturally adapted individuals to endure heat. Constant exposure from a young age would have built a degree of acclimatization, rendering them more robust than those from cooler climates. However, even well-trained soldiers were vulnerable. Heat exhaustion and sunstroke would have been constant threats, capable of debilitating entire units. Thus, the strategies for survival, constant hydration, appropriate attire, and logistical planning were not merely comforts, but tactical necessities impacting military effectiveness and the very outcome of battles. The warrior's burden was heavy indeed, a continuous struggle against man and nature alike. For the ancient Egyptian soldier, sheer physical conditioning and mental fortitude were as crucial as any weapon in their arsenal, particularly when facing the desert's punishing heat. Discipline in discomfort wasn't merely a military creed. It was an ingrained survival mechanism that forged the strength of the soldier. Recruitment and training practices, though not extensively detailed in surviving records, would have inherently selected for individuals capable of enduring extreme conditions. Growing up in Egypt meant a lifetime of exposure to heat, allowing for gradual acclimatization, a physiological change where the body becomes more efficient at cooling itself through processes like earlier and increased sweating and reduced sodium loss in sweat. This natural conditioning was then amplified by military training, which likely involved extensive marching and physical drills under the sun, further honing their heat tolerance. Crucially, the organization of military campaigns involved strict adherence to practical strategies for managing the heat. Marches were often conducted in the cooler hours of early morning or late evening, avoiding the brutal midday sun. When daytime movement was unavoidable, commanders would enforce frequent stops for rest and rehydration. The provision of fresh, cool water was a priority, with designated personnel responsible for its procurement and distribution. Discipline ensured that soldiers consumed their water rations judiciously and rested when commanded, overriding instincts to push forward at a potentially fatal pace. Dr. Joyce Tildesley, known for her work on ancient Egyptian military, notes that logistical mastery, particularly concerning water and shade, often determined the success or failure of a military endeavor. Furthermore, the psychological resilience of the individual soldier played a vital role. The threat of heat stroke and dehydration was well understood, not just in terms of physical failure, but as a risk to unit cohesion and morale. A soldier's ability to maintain focus, follow orders, and support comrades while experiencing profound discomfort was a testament to their training and the inherent strength of the army structure. Therefore, the strength of the Egyptian soldier was not just in their martial prowess, but in their capacity to exert self-control and maintain discipline, even when their bodies cried out against the unrelenting assault of the desert sun. This profound adaptation allowed them to project power and maintain order across a vast, hot empire. As the sun dipped below the western desert horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, a palpable sense of relief would sweep across ancient Egypt. This moment, twilight's embrace, marked the brief, precious hours when the searing daytime heat began to cede its dominion, offering a welcome respite for all who lived under the unforgiving sky. While surface temperatures could drop surprisingly quickly after sundown, particularly in the open desert, the accumulated heat within the urban fabric and especially within homes built of high thermal mass materials like mud brick meant that interiors remained warm for several hours. This phenomenon, known as thermal lag, was both a blessing and a challenge. During the day, it provided insulation. After sunset, it meant that the coolness of the night took time to permeate indoor spaces. However, the external air temperature would reliably begin its descent, slowly approaching more comfortable levels. This period was often the most active socially and economically. Families would gather in courtyards or on rooftops, which, having been exposed to direct sun all day, paradoxically became cooler than ground level once the sun set, and they shed their heat rapidly into the night sky through radiative cooling. It was a time for communal meals, storytelling, and perhaps even some light work after the enforced midday siesta. The cooling effect of the Nile was most pronounced during these hours, with gentle breezes often carrying a refreshing humidity inland. The design of ancient Egyptian houses, with their small, high windows, now became beneficial for ventilation. These openings, which had minimized solar gain during the day, could now be opened to allow cooler night air to circulate, gradually pushing out the day's trapped heat. This natural ventilation, often enhanced by internal courtyards or cross-drafts through multiple rooms, was critical in preparing the home for the night's sleep. The brief respite of the setting sun was not just a sensory experience, it was a carefully managed transition, a physiological and architectural shift designed to maximize comfort and prepare the body and home for rest after enduring another punishing day. With the sun sinking lower and the air beginning its gradual cool down, the ancient Egyptian household transitioned into a series of highly practical and culturally significant evening rituals. This gathering glow wasn't merely about winding down. It was a deliberate process of preparing for the night, both physically and socially, against the backdrop of lingering heat. One primary ritual was the communal evening meal. After a day of light eating and potentially strenuous activity, the evening offered a chance for more substantial nourishment. These meals were typically consumed outdoors in courtyards or on rooftops, benefiting from the cooling effects of radiative heat loss and any gentle breezes. As documented by archaeologists studying settlement patterns, large courtyard spaces were central to domestic life precisely because they allowed for such activities. The food, often prepared in the cooler hours or quickly cooked over small fires, would have included staples like bread, vegetables, fish from the Nile, and sometimes roasted fowl, accompanied by beer and fresh fruits. This communal act served to rehydrate, replenish energy stores, and foster social bonds as the household gathered. Personal hygiene was another crucial evening ritual. After a day of sweating and dust, a refreshing wash was essential. Access to water from the Nile or wells meant individuals could bathe, cooling their bodies directly. Applying unguents and perfumed oils, common practice, served not just cosmetic purposes, but could aid in soothing skin and providing a sensation of coolness, especially if mixed with mint or other aromatic plants. These oils also helped to protect the skin from dryness. As darkness fell, artificial light became necessary. Small oil lamps, typically made of pottery and fueled by vegetable oils or animal fat, provided a warm, flickering glow. While generating a small amount of heat, this was likely negligible compared to the ambient temperature. These evening activities prolonged human activity into the cooler parts of the day and allowed for essential social and familial interaction, reinforcing community bonds before the deep rest of the night. The gathering glow of lamps and voices, set against the vast encroaching darkness, was a deliberate embrace of the cooler hours, a final communal effort before each individual sought the ultimate respite of sleep, a precious commodity in their sun-drenched world. As the last vestige of daylight faded, the ancient Egyptian night truly began, offering the most crucial respite from the day's oppressive heat. Despite the lingering warmth in the air, a key strategy for nocturnal cooling became universally adopted. Born of necessity and environmental wisdom, sleeping on rooftops under the vast, star-studded sky. This practice, attested through archaeological observations of flat, accessible roofs and ethnographic parallels in traditional Egyptian villages today, was fundamental for achieving comfort. The thick mud brick walls, which provided excellent thermal mass during the day, retained the sun's heat well into the night, making interior rooms uncomfortably warm for immediate sleep. However, rooftops, directly exposed to the night sky, shed their absorbed heat rapidly through a process called radiative cooling. The Earth's surface radiates heat upwards, and on a clear, dry desert night, this heat loss is highly efficient, causing the roof surface and the air immediately above it to cool considerably faster than the air at ground level or inside buildings. Imagine lying on a woven mat on a flat, whitewashed rooftop, feeling the temperature drop by several degrees as the vast expanse of the cosmos unfolded above. The absence of heavy bedding was also deliberate. Instead of thick blankets, individuals would rely on light linen sheets or simply be covered by their minimal clothing. Headrests, often made of wood or stone, were used instead of soft pillows. These elevated the head, promoting airflow around the neck and head, crucial areas for body temperature regulation. Dr. Kent R. Weeks, extensively involved in the Theban mapping project, speaks about how essential this rooftop living space was, not just for practical cooling, but as a social and observational hub in the evenings. For the ancient Egyptians, sleeping under the stars was more than a necessity. It was a connection to the celestial, a profound way to truly experience the chill of the night. This collective movement to the higher, cooler vantage point allowed for restorative rest, preparing them to face another scorching day. With the day's heat finally receding, even if gradually, the primary aim of the night was to achieve restorative sleep, a crucial component for sustained endurance in such a demanding climate. For ancient Egyptians, this meant creating conditions conducive to slumber, often a stark contrast to modern sleeping arrangements, truly allowing for dreams under the heavens. The choice of sleeping surfaces was dictated by the need for coolness and hygiene. Instead of plush mattresses, most Egyptians, particularly the common populace, would have slept on simple rush mats or woven palm frond beds. These materials allowed for excellent airflow beneath the body, minimizing trapped heat. The absence of heavy bedding, limited to a thin linen sheet, if any at all, further reduced insulation, promoting conductive and convective heat loss from the body to the cooler night air. For a modern person accustomed to soft pillows, the ancient Egyptian headrest, a curved wooden or stone support designed to elevate the head and neck without impeding airflow, might seem uncomfortable. However, this design was remarkably effective at preventing overheating of the head, a critical area for temperature regulation, and also helped to keep elaborate hairstyles intact without crushing them. Beyond the physical setup, the cooler night temperatures, often dropping to 25 to 30 Celsius, 77-86 degrees C, from daytime highs of 40 degrees C+, allowed the body to naturally dissipate heat built up during the day. This nightly thermal gradient was essential for the body's physiological recovery. The open air sleeping on rooftops meant constant exposure to any available breeze, enhancing evaporative cooling, even from minimal perspiration. The silence of the desert night, punctuated perhaps by the distant calls of nocturnal animals or the gentle rustling of palm fronds, would have offered a peaceful environment, fostering deeper sleep. The very act of sleeping outside under the vast, clear sky, observing the celestial bodies, also subtly connected the individual to the cosmic order of ancient Egyptian belief. This psychological tranquility, combined with the physical adaptations tailored for cooling, collectively enabled them to escape the day's oppressive heat in slumber. Their sleep was a dynamic interplay of practical solutions and environmental rhythms, ensuring that, even without air conditioning, they could find the deep rest needed to face another day in their sun-drenched civilization. While the elite and common folk alike adapted to the summer heat, a particular segment of society faced a disproportionate burden: those engaged in manual labor and service. The servant's toil often meant performing arduous tasks in the most sweltering conditions, highlighting a less visible but equally critical aspect of ancient Egypt's human adaptation. In large estates, aristocratic households, or royal palaces, the domestic staff and laborers were crucial to maintaining the comfortable lifestyles of their employers. This often involved tasks that generated heat, such as cooking over fires, or physically demanding chores like grinding grain, fetching water, or carrying goods, all beneath direct sunlight or in poorly ventilated work areas. While the architectural ingenuity discussed earlier provided some respite within the main living quarters, service areas, kitchens, workshops, slave quarters were often less optimally designed for passive cooling. Archaeological excavations of worker villages, while showing thoughtful design, indicate that living conditions for many were still challenging. To mitigate the effects of continuous labor in high temperatures, these individuals would rely heavily on the most basic cooling strategies. Constant hydration was non-negotiable. Access to water, often carried over distances, was a lifeline. Minimal clothing, usually just a simple loincloth for men and a basic tunic for women, maximized the body's natural evaporative cooling. Short, frequent breaks in the shade were likely essential, allowing the body's core temperature to stabilize. Historical texts occasionally refer to the provision of food and drink to workers, emphasizing the pragmatic understanding that well-nourished and hydrated laborers were more productive. The reality of their situation means that acclimatization played an even more vital role for these individuals. From a young age, many would have been accustomed to physical work in the heat, developing the physiological adaptations that allowed them to function where others might quickly succumb to heat stress. However, even with these adaptations, the risk of heat exhaustion and sunstroke would have been a daily companion. The unseen labor of servants, slaves, and workers in the sweltering shadow was a continuous, physically demanding battle against the elements, enabling the comfortable existence of others while embodying the very limits of human endurance in a world without mechanical cooling. Their untold stories underscore the differential impact of climate on ancient Egyptian society. For those in the lower strata of ancient Egyptian society, the farmers, laborers, and many of the servants, life was characterized by humility and hardship. While the general strategies for heat mitigation were available to all, access to the most effective means of cooling varied significantly, making their daily struggle against the 120 degrading fresques. Summer, a testament to sheer endurance. Their homes, often smaller and more rudimentary versions of the mud brick dwellings of the elite, still benefited from the thermal mass of adobe. However, they might lack the complex ventilation systems, shaded courtyards, or access to rooftop spaces that provided superior cooling. Many agrarian workers, for instance, lived in villages directly adjacent to their fields. Their days would be spent under the unrelenting sun, cultivating crops, irrigating land, or harvesting, tasks that were physically demanding and offered little respite from direct exposure. Hydration, while universally understood as vital, could be a constant challenge. Unlike the elite who might have servants dedicated to fetching and chilling water, laborers often relied on their own means, potentially having to walk significant distances to the Nile or a well. The cooling effect of water evaporating from porous vessels was a universal benefit, but the quantity and accessibility could differ. Their diet, while rich in carbohydrates and water-dense fruits when in season, might have been less varied and consistent than that of wealthier households, potentially affecting overall health and resilience. Despite these disadvantages, the lower strata developed an unparalleled physiological and cultural resilience. Their bodies were acclimatized from birth to lifelong exposure to heat and physical labor. They would instinctively seek out any available shade, take frequent, short breaks, and coordinate their most strenuous tasks with the cooler parts of the day, working earlier and later to avoid the midday sun. Dr. Anna Stevens, known for her study of Amana workers' villages, emphasizes that despite the hardships, these communities were highly organized and adapted, demonstrating remarkable levels of cooperation to sustain their lives in such an extreme environment. Their existence, therefore, highlights the fundamental human capacity to endure and adapt, even when resources are scarce. The humility and hardship faced by these individuals underscore the daily battle against environmental extremes, a constant negotiation where survival often trumped comfort. Even at the pinnacle of ancient Egyptian society, where the pharaoh's decree commanded vast resources and labor, the inexorable force of the summer heat remained. While the elite certainly enjoyed comforts unimaginable to the common person, they too were ultimately bound by the limitations of their climate, finding ingenious ways to mitigate heat rather than eliminate it. The palaces and grand villas of the pharaohs and nobility were architectural masterpieces designed with cooling in mind. These structures were significantly larger, enabling thicker walls and more extensive use of passive cooling features. Deeply recessed windows, oriented away from direct sun, and multiple layers of courtyards, often with shade trees and sometimes even small reflective pools, created a series of microclimates. Archaeologists, like Dr. Barry Kemp at Amana, have unearthed compelling evidence of sophisticated airflow management systems. High ceilings allowed hot air to rise, and some structures even incorporated primitive wind scoops or vents to capture cooler breezes and direct them through living spaces. These larger, more complex designs offered a substantially cooler interior environment than smaller homes. Beyond the architecture, the pharaoh and his court had access to dedicated personnel whose sole purpose was to ensure their comfort. Servants, discussed previously, would constantly fan their masters with large palm frond or feather fans, creating a personal breeze that aided evaporative cooling. Water, often scented and chilled in porous vessels, was always at hand. Royal baths, fed by channels from the Nile or carefully maintained wells, provided invigorating relief through immersion. The use of fine, intricately woven linen garments of the highest quality, sometimes almost sheer, further maximized the body's ability to dissipate heat. While such luxuries provided significant mitigation, they did not offer absolute emancipation from the heat. The fundamental physics of climate remained, The pharaoh might have had an entire retinue dedicated to fanning, but the air being fanned was still hot. His palace might be cooler than a common dwelling, but it was still subject to thermal lag. The comforts of the elite were thus a sophisticated layering of architectural, personal, and human-powered passive cooling techniques, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in their era. Their lives, though privileged, serve as yet another testament to the pervasive dominance of the Egyptian summer, a force that even a pharaoh could only manage, never truly conquer. While the elite possessed a multitude of advantages in mitigating the summer heat, their struggle was not entirely absent. It simply manifested in different ways, shaped by their power and privilege. Their challenge was less about immediate physical survival and more about maintaining an image of perpetual comfort and control in a climate that constantly threatened it. For the pharaoh and high-ranking officials, the demands of statecraft and ritual often superseded personal comfort. Despite architectural cooling and numerous attendants, formal ceremonies, religious processions, and diplomatic receptions frequently occurred outdoors or in grand, albeit cooler, halls that still felt the weight of the ambient temperature. Imagine a pharaoh adorned in ceremonial regalia that, while magnificent, might have been heavier than daily linen wear, enduring a lengthy public address under the mid-morning sun. Even the most sophisticated passive cooling could not entirely negate the heat, requiring immense personal fortitude and the projection of divine composure. Furthermore, the very resources that provided their comfort, laborers for construction, servants for fanning, water carriers, represented another aspect of their struggle: the constant organization and maintenance of a complex societal system. The effective management of these resources was crucial, not just for personal comfort, but for the stability of the entire kingdom. The elite's dependence on others to create their comfortable environment meant a different kind of burden, a managerial heat that, while not physiological, was politically and socially demanding. Dr. Toby Wilkinson, an expert on ancient Egyptian political history, often highlights the administrative complexity required to keep the ancient Egyptian state running smoothly, particularly in such a challenging environment. Indeed, even the pharaohs, powerful as they were, could not simply decree the heat away. Their solutions, while luxurious, were ultimately clever adaptations rather than outright mastery over natural forces. This demonstrates that regardless of one's social standing, the ancient Egyptian summer was a democratizing force, demanding respect and adaptation from all. The power and privilege of the elite meant a battle fought with more resources and a different aesthetic, but it was a struggle nonetheless, one that underscored the pervasive and undeniable influence of climate on every layer of their magnificent civilization. Despite the omnipresent challenge of the summer heat, ancient Egyptian life was far from a dour existence of constant thermal struggle. Festivals, deeply interwoven with their religious and agricultural cycles, offered vibrant opportunities for communal expression and joyous celebration, often taking place amidst the scorching air. These festivals, frequently tied to the ebb and flow of the Nile or the changing seasons, were major social events. Imagine the joyous chaos of a harvest festival or the annual Opet festival, where the cult images of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were paraded from Karnak to Luxor. These processions and gatherings involved large numbers of people, music, dancing, and feasting, activities that would naturally generate body heat and increase the sensation of warmth. While specific dates varied, Many key festivals, including those associated with sowing and reaping, would inevitably fall during warmer periods. However, the Egyptians ingeniously integrated cooling strategies into their celebrations. Festivals often took place near the Nile, allowing easy access to water for drinking, refreshing dips, or cooling splashes. Temporary shelters, awnings, and tents would have been erected to provide crucial shade for participants and spectators. The food consumed at festivals often featured an abundance of water-rich fruits and vegetables, and of course, large quantities of beer were imbibed, serving as both refreshment and a mild depressant, perhaps making the heat more tolerable. Dr. Zahi Hawass frequently highlights the robust nature of Egyptian celebrations, underscoring their communal spirit, even in challenging conditions. Furthermore, the very garments worn during festivals, typically made of light, breathable linen, were perfectly suited for such occasions. Dancers and revelers, despite their energetic movements, would benefit from the fabric's ability to wick away moisture and facilitate evaporative cooling. While the air might have been scorching, the collective spirit and the integration of practical cooling methods allowed for energetic participation. The festival's fervor wasn't diminished by the heat. It was amplified by the shared experience of enduring and celebrating together, turning even the most formidable environmental challenge into an opportunity for communal joy and spiritual connection. These celebrations demonstrate their capacity not just to survive, but to truly live and express themselves vibrantly under the ever-present glare of their desert sun. The vibrant celebrations of ancient Egypt, even those held under the full force of the summer sun, underscore a profound aspect of human nature, the capacity for joy in adversity. Far from being perpetually oppressed by the climate, the Egyptians found myriad ways to embrace life, finding light even in the face of the scorching sun. This resilience stemmed from a deeply integrated cultural approach that normalized adaptation. From childhood, individuals were accustomed to the environmental rhythms, learning intuitive and practical ways to manage heat. This wasn't perceived as an abnormal struggle, but simply life. The psychological burden of constant heat, often a significant factor in modern complaints, was likely mitigated by this ingrained acceptance and a communal understanding that everyone shared the same challenge. This collective experience fostered solidarity and shared coping mechanisms. Crucially, the focus on preventative measures, the architectural design, the material culture of clothing and vessels, the dietary choices, meant that severe discomfort and heat-related illness were actively managed, minimizing the times when heat became truly debilitating. When people were well hydrated, appropriately dressed, and had access to shade and cooler spaces, their capacity for enjoyment and participation in community life remained robust. The sheer volume of surviving art depicting daily life and festive occasions, often filled with energetic and smiling figures, suggests a people who, despite climatic challenges, led fulfilling and vibrant lives. Ultimately, the ability of ancient Egyptians to celebrate amidst the heat reflects a sophisticated synthesis of practical intelligence, social cohesion, and spiritual conviction. Their rituals and festivals were not simply escapism. They were affirmations of life, fertility, and divine blessing, even in the harshest conditions. This blend allowed them to not only survive the unforgiving summer, but to find genuine happiness and purpose within their environment. Their legacy teaches us that human flourishing is not solely dependent on overcoming every environmental obstacle, but, perhaps more profoundly, on a wise and thoughtful integration with the world around us. finding light even when the sun shines with unyielding intensity. Beyond the settled comfort of the Nile Valley, ancient Egyptians frequently ventured into the vast, unforgiving desert. Whether for trade, quarrying, mining, or military expeditions, these journeys presented the ultimate test of human endurance against heat and dehydration. Traversing the desert's vastness meant confronting the journey's thirst as a constant, life-threatening reality. Such expeditions required meticulous planning and an almost obsessive focus on water management. Supply lines were paramount, often dictating the routes and feasible distances of travel. Water was carried in sturdy leather skins, which, while heavy, prevented evaporation better than porous pottery in transit. When possible, journeys were scheduled during cooler months or at night to avoid the brutal daytime sun. However, many resource-rich desert locations, like the turquoise mines of Serabit el-Qadim in Sinai or the quarries of Wadi Hammamat, necessitated continuous presence regardless of the season. Imagine the caravan, donkeys laden with supplies, men marching in single file, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of a known well or oasis. Each individual would carry their own water ration, usually in a ceramic kulla, strategically dampened to encourage evaporative cooling. Head coverings, like simple linen scarves or turbans, were essential to protect against sunstroke and to minimize water loss from the scalp. Loose, long-sleeved linen garments might seem counterintuitive in extreme heat, but they served to create a microclimate close to the skin, slowing the rate of sweat evaporation and thus preserving body fluids, while still being breathable enough to allow some cooling. Dr. John Baines notes that Egyptian inscriptions detailing desert expeditions often emphasize the sheer scale of water provisions, highlighting its critical role. The physiological demands were immense. Prolonged exposure to temperatures consistently above 40 °C, 104 degrees, without adequate hydration, could lead to rapid dehydration, heat exhaustion, and ultimately fatal heat stroke. Acclimatization, built through a lifetime in the Egyptian climate, was crucial, but even the fittest individuals were vulnerable. Therefore, the success of any desert journey hinged entirely on precise logistical calculations, disciplined water consumption, and an intimate, respectful understanding of the desert's capacity to both provide and deny life. The journey's thirst was a constant reminder of humanity's fragility against nature's raw power. Despite the immense physiological strain, the sheer willpower of ancient Egyptians to persevere on the path through the searing desert is a testament to their profound motivation and resilience. It underscores that human will and purpose can transcend even the most brutal environmental adversities. The motivations for these perilous journeys were varied but powerful. The quest for precious resources like gold from the Nubian desert, copper from Sinai, or granite and basalt from the eastern desert. The strategic imperative of trade routes, connecting Egypt to the Near East or Central Africa, also drove extensive desert travel. These ventures were not leisure trips. They were economic and political necessities, crucial for the prosperity and power of the Egyptian state. This overarching purpose instilled a collective determination in those undertaking the journeys. Effective leadership and strict hierarchical control were also paramount. Expedition leaders, often high-ranking officials, were responsible for maintaining discipline, rationing supplies, and ensuring adherence to the planned route and resting schedule. This structure minimized individual decision-making errors that could prove fatal in the desert. The psychological aspect of collective endeavor cannot be overstated. shared hardship often forges strong bonds and a mutual reliance that fosters perseverance. Moreover, the intimate knowledge of the desert accumulated over millennia was passed down through generations. Guides and seasoned travelers understood the subtle signs of impending sandstorms, the location of hidden wadis, dry riverbeds that might hold subterranean water, and the optimal times for movement. This local knowledge, combined with a pragmatic acceptance of the desert's dangers, allowed for a nuanced strategy. They knew when to push forward and, critically, when to seek temporary shelter and allow the body to recover, often digging shallow depressions in the sand for minimal cover. Dr. Joyce Feiler, in her work on ancient Egyptian life, highlights the pragmatic and resourceful nature of these desert communities and expeditions. The human will to move forward, driven by economic necessity, royal decree, or the simple desire for survival, transformed grueling desert crossings into achievable feats. These were not just physical journeys, but profound demonstrations of human spirit against an elemental force, where every step was a deliberate act of defiance against the desert's vastness, fueled by a collective dedication to the task at hand. For the ancient Egyptians, life's end was not an ending, but a transition, a journey towards the promise of an eternal afterlife. Yet, even in the solemn realm of death, the pervasive influence of their climate, particularly the extreme heat, played a critical, if perhaps unexpected, role in their funerary practices and their very conception of eternity. The shadow of the tomb, typically carved deep into the rock or constructed with massive stone blocks, served a dual purpose: a secure eternal resting place and a naturally cool, stable environment. The deep burial chambers, insulated by hundreds of feet of rock or thick masonry, maintained a remarkably consistent temperature, far removed from the scorching daily fluctuations on the surface. This thermal stability was not merely for the comfort of the deceased, but for the preservation of the body and its elaborate grave goods. The dry desert air, combined with the cool, stable microclimate within the tomb, created ideal conditions for mummification and the longevity of organic materials. This was a deliberate collaboration with nature, leveraging the arid environment to achieve their spiritual goals. The act of mummification itself, the elaborate process of preserving the body, stemmed from the belief that the physical form was vital for the ka and ba components of the soul to return to in the afterlife. This process included desiccation using natron salt, which effectively dried the body and prevented decomposition, directly combating the effects of heat and humidity that would rapidly break down a corpse. The wrapped linen bandages provided further insulation and protection. Dr. Salima Ikram, a leading expert on ancient Egyptian mummification, emphasizes the scientific precision involved, demonstrating a deep understanding of natural processes to achieve their religious aims. Thus, the journey to the afterlife was inextricably linked to managing the climate. The tombs were designed as permanent, climate-controlled sanctuaries, offering a physical manifestation of eternity. Even in death, the ancient Egyptians sought to meticulously manage their environment, creating a perpetual coolness to ensure the promise of resurrection and eternal life. This dedication highlights a profound connection between their mortal and immortal concerns, all shaped by the relentless sun and the strategic coolness of the earth. The intricate rituals of passage surrounding death in ancient Egypt were meticulously designed not only to honor the deceased, but also to prepare them for eternity in an ecologically sensitive manner. The dry heat, while a challenge for the living, became an unwitting ally in these sacred preparations. The prime example of this synergy is the art of mummification itself, which could take up to 70 days. The initial stages involved the removal of internal organs, which are the first to decompose, particularly in a hot climate. The body was then packed and covered with natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture found in certain Egyptian wadis. Natron is a powerful desiccant, effectively drawing moisture out of the body tissues. This process of dehydration, taking place under the desert's dry heat, though usually done in specially constructed workshops to control exposure, was paramount. It prevented putrefaction and preserved the body, transforming it into a lasting vessel for the soul. This profound understanding of chemistry and decomposition, gained through millennia of observation, was crucial for their funerary beliefs. Following desiccation, the shrunken body was carefully anointed with oils and resins, often naturally antimicrobial, further protecting it. It was then meticulously wrapped in hundreds of meters of linen bandages, which not only maintained the body's form, but also provided insulation against further environmental degradation. The use of linen, cultivated near the Nile, linked the cycle of life from fibrous flax to the ritual of death and eternal preservation. Dr. John H. Taylor, a curator at the British Museum specializing in mummification, continually highlights the practical and symbolic ingenuity behind these rituals. Final rituals often involved processional journeys across the landscape towards the west bank of the Nile, the traditional land of the dead, usually at cooler times of day. The construction of tombs and temples for the deceased, a monumental undertaking involving vast numbers of laborers, adhered to the architectural principles of cooling and durability, ensuring that the resting places were as eternal and stable as possible. Thus, the entire trajectory from the moment of death to final interment was a testament to the ancient Egyptians' sophisticated interplay between their cultural beliefs, a deep understanding of their unique environment, and an unwavering will to secure a comfortable and lasting eternity, even within the confines of a perpetually hot world. The whispers of the ancients echo not just from monumental architecture and cryptic hieroglyphs, but from the very strategies they employed for survival in one of Earth's harshest climates. Their ability to not only endure, but to flourish for millennia in the scorching heat of Egypt without modern air conditioning offers profound insights into human adaptability and ingenuity. These echoes of survival resonate most strongly in the principles of passive design that guided their construction. The use of high thermal mass materials like mud brick and stone, the strategic orientation of buildings to minimize solar gain, and the incorporation of features like small, high windows and shaded courtyards allowed them to create interior microclimates significantly cooler than the outside air. These weren't mere architectural quirks. They were sophisticated, climate-responsive engineering solutions. For instance, the insulating qualities of a 60 cm thick mud brick wall are comparable to modern standards for energy efficiency, effectively delaying heat transfer by several hours. Beyond architecture, their daily routines were synchronized with the sun and the rhythms of the Nile. The morning and late afternoon hours became periods of peak activity, interspersed with a necessary midday siesta. Hydration was a constant, almost ritualistic necessity, facilitated by the abundant cool water from porous pottery vessels. Clothing, predominantly light, loose-fitting linen, was designed for maximum breathability and evaporative cooling, an elegantly simple solution that outperformed many heavier fabrics. These practices weren't just individual preferences. They were embedded in the collective consciousness and cultural fabric of society, passed down through generations. Expert opinion, from archaeologists like Dr. Zahi Hawass to environmental architects studying historical cooling, consistently highlights that this was a holistic approach. No single solution addressed the heat. Rather, it was a systemic integration of material science, behavioral adaptation, and cultural wisdom. The sheer longevity of ancient Egyptian civilization, spanning over 3,000 years, stands as an undeniable testament to the efficacy of these methods. The whispers of the ancients, therefore, are a powerful reminder that complex challenges can often be met with elegant, sustainable solutions, deeply attuned to the natural world. Their survival in the sands offers a rich legacy of human ingenuity in the face of extreme environmental demands. The enduring legacy of ancient Egypt is not solely found in its pyramids and pharaohs, but in its unparalleled demonstration of human adaptation. Their strategies for surviving, and indeed thriving, in 120 triadams, 49 shurantiranti, summers without air conditioning, offer vital lessons for a world increasingly grappling with climate change and the need for sustainable living. One of the most compelling lessons is the profound value of passive design. The ancient Egyptians understood that building within the environment, rather than against it, yielded the most sustainable and effective solutions. Their use of high thermal mass materials, strategic ventilation, and natural shading, which is now being rigorously studied by modern architects and engineers, demonstrates principles that are economically viable and environmentally sound. Projects like the Masdar Institute in Abu Dhabi, for instance, actively draw inspiration from traditional Middle Eastern and North African architectural cooling techniques, including concepts similar to ancient Egyptian windscoops. Furthermore, their emphasis on behavioral adaptation, the siesta, the early morning and late evening work cycles, the consistent hydration, the choice of appropriate clothing, highlights the power of cultural practices in modulating climate impact. It underlines that comfort is not solely a technological achievement, but also a function of lifestyle choices and societal rhythms. In a future where energy conservation becomes paramount, these soft solutions, involving human habits and societal organization, will be as critical as hard engineering. Dr. Kent Blatter, a climatologist, often remarks on the human body's remarkable capacity for acclimatization, a process that the ancient Egyptians mastered through generations of continuous exposure. This inherent resilience, combined with intelligent environmental design, allowed them to maintain a complex civilization for thousands of years. Their story serves as a powerful counter-narrative to the modern reliance on energy-intensive mechanical cooling. The ancient Egyptians remind us that human ingenuity, when deeply attuned to the natural world, can invent ways to find comfort and maintain productive societies even under extremes. Their legacy of adaptation is not a relic of the past. It is a blueprint for a resilient future, a testament to a civilization that understood, perhaps better than any other, how to find enduring coolness in an intensely hot world. Over 3 millennia, ancient Egypt perfected the art of living harmoniously with extreme heat, developing a sophisticated system of adaptations that enabled a thriving civilization. Today, as global temperatures rise and energy concerns mount, the echoes of their solutions resonate more powerfully than ever, forming an enduring link between their ancient struggles and our modern challenges. One of the most striking modern echoes lies in sustainable architecture. Contemporary architects and urban planners across the globe are increasingly turning to traditional building techniques from hot climates. The principles of thermal mass, passive ventilation, and strategic shading, so expertly employed in ancient Egyptian mud brick homes and temples, are now core tenets of green building design. For example, modern constructions in arid regions are experimenting with thick insulated walls and strategically placed vents to mimic the slow heat absorption and release of adobe. Solar passive design, which optimizes a building's orientation and window placement to control sunlight and airflow, directly reflects millennia-old Egyptian wisdom. Furthermore, the fundamental importance of water management, though technologically advanced today, still shares a lineage with ancient practices. While modern societies have complex irrigation and purification systems, the core principle of using water for cooling, evaporative cooling from fountains, ponds, or even wetted surfaces, remains valid and is being re-explored in urban design. Think of misting systems in modern outdoor spaces. They are a direct, albeit mechanized, descendant of the ancient Egyptians' dampened cloths and porous water jars. Dr. Hassan Fathi, the renowned Egyptian architect, famously championed the revival of traditional mud brick construction and localized cooling techniques in the 20th century. His work at New Gorna village demonstrated the effectiveness and cultural appropriateness of these ancient solutions. Fathi's insights bridge the chronological gap, proving that these are not mere historical curiosities, but robust, effective answers to persistent climatic challenges. The ancient Egyptian struggle for comfort against a relentless sun provides a rich quarry of proven, sustainable strategies, informing our present and offering guidance for a future grappling with an increasingly hot world. The study of how ancient Egyptians coped with extreme heat transcends simple architectural and daily life strategies. It speaks to the enduring, timeless human spirit, their ability to adapt, innovate, and thrive in conditions that challenge modern technologies offers a profound commentary on humanity's capacity to confront and integrate with its environment then and now. The defining characteristic of their success was not a magical invention, but a holistic approach, a deep understanding of natural processes combined with collective behavioral modification. This integration of passive technologies and active human adjustment created a resilient system. They understood that achieving relative comfort was a constant negotiation with nature, not a conquest of it. This wisdom is particularly relevant today as we face unprecedented global environmental shifts. The ancient Egyptians offer a powerful historical precedent that adaptation to extremes is possible, even when technological solutions are limited or non-existent. Their enduring structures, their art, their very civilization, emerged from and persisted within these challenging conditions. They demonstrate that human flourishing isn't contingent upon perfect environmental control, but upon intelligent, sustainable interaction. The pyramids and temples stand not just as monuments to power and belief, but as testaments to pragmatic genius born of necessity. As we look to a future with potentially hotter summers and increasing demands on energy resources, the lessons from the Nile Valley become increasingly pertinent. We are reminded that solutions often lie in simplicity, in harnessing natural forces, and in collective, disciplined action. The ancient Egyptians didn't just sleep through 120-degree Gagni summers. They lived, loved, created, and built one of history's most enduring civilizations. Their story is a powerful affirmation of the human capacity for resilience, a testament to the timeless human spirit's ability to adapt to extremes, continually seeking balance, then and now, under the unwavering gaze of the sun. Their wisdom is a whisper across millennia, urging us to look to the earth, the sky, and to ourselves for the most sustainable path forward.